Hello, welcome to the Talking City podcast, coming to you from the Manchester Evening News. My name's Joe Bray, joined by Simon Bajkowski, and we're talking FA Cup final. City against the odds, would you say? They were walking wounded. They had a number of players dead on the feet, but they got through against Chelsea at Wembley, which, as we saw on Sunday, is easier said than done for a Premier League side. Simon, after the Real Madrid game, we were driving to Wembley and we said they could lose this because Bernardo and other players were saying that they were knackered. Players were saying that they were coming off and they were exhausted. So to come through that, it might not have been the best performance, but to come through and get the win was a really, really good afternoon's work.
Yeah, it was one of the worst performances of the season and one of the best results of the season, really. And I saw a bit about sort of it being one of City's worst performances of the season, if not the worst. And it kind of was, but you sort of also have to deal with the circumstances. And, you sort of think back to some other games in the season, and City have been at a far stronger level and have performed much worse. Like, it did feel as though kind of like Nicholas Jackson added at least 2 points onto every sort of City player's rating for the game, because if he had taken the chances that he should have done, City would have been battered. But at the same time, like, they stuck it out and they ground it out, and they have to be given, their credit for the effort, because to go around and to turn around and do that again, and whether it was exaggerated or not after the final whistle, the effect, both mentally as well as physically, of going out the way they did to Real Madrid was certainly underplayed before the game. And then after it was kind of like, look, do you know how difficult it is to get over that in like no time at all? So it was huge on Saturday. It was a big win that puts City still on course for silverware this season. So really good day.
Well, this is it. They could have gone from on for a double treble to out of two competitions in the space of 3 days. And the Madrid game, yeah, we know that it was a sort of a crushing blow. But as we said in the aftermath, if you're going to go out of the Champions League, you do it like that, because it wasn't like the other Champions League exits. But the fact that they had Chelsea, they've not beaten this season, they've conceded goals, the Cole Palmer factor, it felt like all the ingredients were there. And I've got my notes of what to talk about here in the first part of the podcast, and the first 2 points I've got are the worst performance of the season or the best, and you answered that. And then I've just got the words Nicholas Jackson, and they had a bit of luck, didn't they? Because when Jackson goes through, most of the players, you think at the very least they're going to have a shot, and somehow he doesn't. And there was a bit of a confidence from the neutral perspective that he was going to mess it up, but they were conceding the chances, and Chelsea, the fans were making noise. They were sort of causing City problems, and they could have gone in at half time down. They could have conceded a penalty for the Grealish one. It wasn't all City's way, was it?
No, not much of it was City's way. I think I turned to you early on and said, Nicholas Jackson looks pretty good, doesn't he? And thankfully that was before he missed about 4, are we saying? 3, 4? 3 really, really good chances that he should have taken. But I mean, it's luck, but it's also kind of City have recruited better than Chelsea have recruited. And, it's same with Liverpool. Like, you talk about Darwin Núñez and all this kind of, he's so good at this, he's so good at that. He's not very good at putting the ball in the back of the net. And unless you have sort of players around him to make up for that, then you've bought a striker who can't strike the ball into the net. So, like, is that luck or is that a bad buy? I think the verdict remains very much out on Jackson, because, I saw something saying from a Chelsea perspective, saying that he wasn't kind of meant to be the main guy this season. They wanted Nkunku to be the main guy, and obviously they've been without Nkunku for most of the season due to injury. So maybe there is that factor, but it should kind of still worry Chelsea that they've got a striker who's so bad at decision making and taking, putting the ball in the net,
or even having a shot when you do on goal.
Well, that's it. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to be too hard on him, but it was kind of like a lot of flashbacks to sort of the the worst bits of Raheem Sterling at City, where who scored a hell of a lot of goals for City. Raheem did, but still, kind of his decision making wasn't always on it, and sort of some costly misses in among the highs. Whereas Jackson's not even had the highs; he's just produced a number of costly misses. Very good from Stefan Ortega, and good from sort of City's defence to kind of recover from the situations that they were in. Kyle Walker used his pace a lot. No idea how Kyle Walker played 90 minutes after 120 on Wednesday after being out for 4 weeks with an injury. I think Guardiola said afterwards, like, did he play well? Absolutely not. But how on earth did he play? And that kind of summed it up for most of the team.
Well, I think, yeah, you mentioned before that it's probably the worst performance of the season. I don't think I transcribe to that because it's the context of it. I think if they were playing it with a week off beforehand and they had the full squad and they played like that, you'd say, yeah, listen, this is not good. But have they ever been that good in an FA Cup semi-final? It always comes after a Champions League game. It's the nerves of it. It's the occasion. It's a different kind of game. And I think to see the sort of the battling qualities and you could see that they were all dead on the feet. Bernardo said afterwards, after 20 odd minutes, he was feeling his hamstring in his calf, and to continue to go again after the physical toll on Wednesday and obviously the mental toll as well, I would say it is up there with one of the best performances, even if the football wasn't great. For them to do that, if I was a City fan, if I was Guardiola, I'd be really, really encouraged that they have the mentality to go and fight for these two remaining titles, even if they can't get the treble anymore. But I think from a neutral, you can watch it and think, oh yeah, City aren't very good, but it's the context, and we'll talk a bit in this about the scheduling and what the players think about that. But they've still got to go out and win the game, and I think for them to do what they did and keep going, and even after they scored to keep Chelsea out, I think was quite impressive. And you saw with the reactions that a couple of the players ran and jumped, and they reacted like it was a really, really big win. And I think they fully deserve a couple of days off coming up now.
Yeah, and I think as well, they'll all have wanted to play, and Rodri the other day asked for a rest, which was well deserved. And Guardiola came out in the press conference like, "Oh well, if players are asking for rest, maybe they won't play big games then." And so they know the environment that they're in. They've all asked to play the game, but Guardiola's the one who's picked them. Could have picked Oscar Bob, could have picked Rico Lewis, could have picked Kovacic, Nunes, could have made any one of those changes. And the fact that he didn't made the job of those players that had played in Madrid that little bit harder. So yeah, they were really up against it, and part of a lot of that was kind of some was being involved in many competitions and playing Real Madrid, and the unfortunate aspects of playing extra time as well. A lot of it was the schedule, but some of it was also Guardiola. He's been vindicated because the players have done the job, but he's also chosen to play kind of better players who are more tired and in less acceptable conditions to start the game over players who aren't quite as good but would have been in a better state to play.
I think we were expecting a few more changes. I certainly was. I thought there would have been space for Kovacic, maybe Nunes. I think Doku had done enough to justify coming in, and if he'd said to Bernardo or Grealish, you can sort of come off the bench and have a bit more time to recover, I don't think anyone would have complained. But yeah, like you say, it was quite a statement of intent, and I think for that reason maybe they deserved or earned the right to complain a little bit. But I know you came into a little bit of hot water online by pointing out the discrepancies in the two squads, but it is a limited squad. I think they arrived at Wembley with 16 outfield players who were fit and they arrived with 18 and left with 16 because John Stones goes off because he just looked off the pace, and it was a physical issue that he went off with at half time. You got Grealish getting a kick. Bernardo says he was playing with injury. De Bruyne continues to look very tired, even if he somehow won man of the match, which I don't think many of us agreed with. But it feels like they're walking wounded at the moment, doesn't it? And obviously they arrived without Haaland, who picked up that issue against Real Madrid. They've not got a lot of players to rotate. You can argue that Kovacic and Nunes and Doku can come in, but beyond that, there's not much that Guardiola could have done, really, is there?
No, I think you can add Lewis and Bob to that list and make it 5. But no, it's a small squad. I mean, I sort of just tweeted the discrepancy between City's and Chelsea's squad in the programme, which was huge. It was like City's took up half a page and Chelsea's was the full page. But that is kind of, anyone who doesn't know anything about football will tell you that City have enough for 2 teams that could win the league, and the B team could win the league. And actually, sort of, if you've been paying attention for, I'd say, any of the past 8 years, you would know that Guardiola deliberately has a very small squad, and they are always on the edge. They always need injuries to go in their favour or to be not too disastrous. We saw it kind of 1920 when they lost the league. They could just about maybe cope without Vincent Kompany, and then Laporte got injured, and that was that. So they're always trying to survive in that sense, because Guardiola deliberately has a smaller squad because he doesn't want sort of the politics and the kind of threats to morale that come with a bigger squad, and that is a choice. But yeah, it does leave City quite often looking pretty thin, and also leaves them needing to rely on their academy. Bob and Lewis are solid options, but they are both from the academy. They've come through and cost City nothing, and sort of shown themselves to be valuable first team members. So kind of you do need quite a lot to go with you, both luck and also preparation and coaching.
Yeah, I think you have the players complaining of injury, but I mean, as you discovered, injured players don't count when it comes to squad size, and neither do academy players as well. A word for Bernardo. He was sort of 3 days after scoring or missing that penalty against Real Madrid. He comes back, he plays through the pain, and he scores a goal. And you could see what it meant to him when he ran off and celebrated. And he admitted after the game, when he spoke to reporters, he said, he explained why he chipped that penalty down the middle. He said he was waiting for the keeper to move, and 99% of the time the keeper does move, and he'd do it again. Basically, he said that he had a sleepless night on Thursday, and then on Wednesday, and then Thursday was a bit better, and Friday a bit better after that. And I don't think there is any blame among the City players for Bernardo or Kovacic missing those penalties, but it's still got to take a massive that must be a massive blow to do that, but then to come back and score a big winner just shows what character he has, and also in the squad as well.
Yeah, it was a very kind of City redemption story, like suffer a massive thing on the Wednesday and then put it all behind you on the Saturday. Yeah, I mean, part of my frustration at Seb on the last podcast, the dearly departed Seb, was just this idea of, it was a rubbish penalty because he missed it, because had he scored it by the keeper diving, then we'd all be saying great penalty. So it's I'm not saying it was a good penalty, but if it had gone in, that would have been the only thing that had mattered. And Bernardo Silva has been one of City's best eyes under Guardiola, one of the best players under Guardiola. He's one of I think, pretty much the best player in the league a few years ago. And he is a guy that loves stepping up in the big moments. I think even against Real, he missed his penalty, but I think he ran more than any other player still. So to then come out and do that again, and he was running everywhere at Wembley, to do that kind of really speaks to what a character he is. And people laugh and joke with him. He's kind of the butt of the joke in the squad, but he's also part of the leadership team, because people recognise kind of just how hugely important he is towards getting City to where they need to be. Guardiola love him, his teammates love him, and the fans love him, and he sort of got everything he deserved on Saturday.
I think that's a good point, because when he stopped in the mix zone after doing a lot of TV interviews, often we expect whoever's done those interviews to sort of politely decline to speak to the media, but he stopped, to his credit. And I think he was speaking for the squad when he had a go at the FA and the schedule, in which I think we're going to get onto after a break. But he is well respected, and for that reason, I don't think, as I say, no one thinks any less of him because of his penalty, and you just got to look at Casemiro for doing exactly the same thing and missing in United shootout the following day. It does happen, and when those penalties go in, they're fantastic. They're a show of nerve, but when they don't, it's a bad penalty. It's just, it wasn't a good penalty, like you say, but it wasn't the end of the world, and it wasn't. I think other players might have got a bit more negative reaction, but I think because Bernardo's offered so much, I think you can let him off that. Before we go to a break, we saw again Jeremy Doku come off the bench again. Jack Grealish had played really well. This time he went off with a bit of a knock, but Doku picked up where Grealish left off. He plays in Kevin De Bruyne to cross for Bernardo for the goal. He looks really good, and Guardiola is very, very happy with Doku and what he's done in recent weeks. And there were quite interesting comments, weren't they, from Guardiola in sort of how Doku has improved off the pitch in order to be able to come off the bench and change games like he has been doing in the last few weeks.
Yeah, Guardiola spoke afterwards about, well, he has spoken to Doku basically and said, look, when I put you in my starting 11, you're good. When I bring you off the bench, you're not. Why is this? Let's change this. And they've worked on it. And, you know, it's partly sort of, well, it's mostly kind of mental and your idea of the role that you play and the role that you can play. You know, anyone who watches Doku thinks, well, he would be amazing to bring on in the last 20 minutes when opposition legs are tiring. And he has done that in the last week against Real and Chelsea. You've had this thing where Grealish has been one of City's best attackers for 70 minutes, 60 minutes, and then Doku has come on and been even better. It's kind of worked in tandem. You also had it at Anfield where, you know, penalty claim aside, he came on 20 minutes to go when City were right up against it and sort of helped with Kovacic to sort of get City more control of the game. So he's shown that he can do different aspects of the game, but be really effective as a substitute. And, you know, nobody wants to be a substitute, but if you're going to be in the bench, you want at least the chance to come on and make a difference. And that's what he's getting at the minute. And yeah, I thought he was very, very good. And sort of adds to what has been, a very promising first season at City. I had to look up the other day. I think he's still 21, which is like amazing. Him and Guardiola still so young. You know, a hell of a lot more to come from both of them, but at the same time, both very, very promising seasons.
Because I think, you look at his start, it was really good. He's scoring goals at West Ham and Leipzig, and you're thinking this is a really good player. Then he goes 20 odd games without getting an assist, and you're wondering what is he doing? And we've been sort of critical of him and what his end product was, but he's come on now, and without Doku, they wouldn't have taken Madrid to extra time. They would have gone out in far more sort of embarrassing fashion. They wouldn't have got that goal against Chelsea, and that might have been another extra time, and you wouldn't know what's going on. And if there is a space for a player in the City team to come off the bench, and if they can work Grealish and Doku, where Grealish plays an hour or 70 minutes and Doku comes on and just finishes the job, I think that could be a really, really dangerous tactic for the run-in. So for Doku in his first season, we see so many players struggle a little bit in the first season or take the time. I think you can see the progression he's made, and I think next season, if he continues to take that on board, the fact that Guardiola's saying we had a word and he's taking it on board and he's now coming and influencing games at Anfield, against Real Madrid, against Chelsea at Wembley, that's really, really encouraging for me in when you look ahead to next season and how you sort of think, right, what City's attack going to look like. Doku's the one who's ending the season in quite good form, and I think that's very promising when you look ahead. And we'll leave our first part of the podcast there. We'll be back after a short break, and we'll discuss what Guardiola and Bernardo said about the scheduling, because they were not happy at all at Wembley. Hello, welcome back to the Talking City podcast. City are through to the FA Cup final. They'll face Manchester United, as we know, but it was there was celebrations at full time at Wembley, but Guardiola and his players were very quick to use those celebrations as a not an excuse, but a reason to say we're not happy. And they were, I mean, Guardiola went on BBC and spoke for 5 minutes or so with Gary Lineker looking on a little bit awkwardly about the schedule. He then went in his press conference and continued his complaints. Bernardo stopped and accused the FA of not letting City play on a level playing field. Bernardo said that they wouldn't have raised these concerns had they lost because they didn't want it to look like an excuse. But it felt like as soon as they won, they were very quick to say this is not acceptable. And I mean, Guardiola all the way through said it is what it is. And if the FA want us to play on the Saturday after playing on Wednesday, then we will do and we'll deal with it. But this was a bit of a release of frustration, wasn't it? And we didn't really hear about the game from Guardiola. We just heard about how unhappy he is about the schedule.
Yeah, there was quite a amusing start to the press conference because we'd all seen his comments to the BBC and sort of, the first question was kind of along those lines. And he kind of said, "Oh, you want me to repeat everything, do you? I've got to repeat everything. All right, then." And just launched off again. And it kind of felt like at full time, it kind of felt like more of a Chelsea story. But then Guardiola just turned it into this City story, and like wider than City story. It's more than just that. I've sort of been. There are many layers to the story, and it's not just kind of City aren't completely blameless. Like Guardiola could have played different players and made more changes, but and I think it will have been more strongly felt because Madrid was so tiring. Like Guardiola complained beforehand, but he wouldn't have known how tiring and sort of hard to recover from Wednesday will have been until they went through Wednesday, and it was tough on him. And I think the thing is, like, nobody has been able to explain why the game was Saturday and not Sunday. It just seems madness still that it was Saturday and not Sunday. And I think it's easier for people to accept if they're given an answer, and there hasn't really been an answer for anyone.
There's sort of belatedly been a sort of a reasoning that Chelsea are playing Arsenal in the Premier League on Tuesday, but I'm not.
But has
sure
that been given as an answer?
I'm not sure when that was.
That was announced after the FA Cups was in place.
And if you know Chelsea are going to be in the cup semi-final, then don't ask them to play on a Tuesday. Put them on the Wednesday. We've seen so many Premier League games move around. Surely they can move as well.
Like, in the absence of any explanation, it looks very cozy and convenient for sort of Sky, who have nothing to do with the FA Cup, that they've been allowed to get Arsenal, Chelsea on Tuesday, Wednesday, Liverpool v Everton, and Thursday, Brighton v City, like a game night after night, rather than one or two of those games being on the same night. But was that why City Chelsea was on the Saturday? I don't know. It just kind of made no sense. And I think Coventry have got a game, sort of a must-win game on Tuesday, so it would have made more sense for them to play.
That one's been moved to Wednesday now, but
has it?
When the game was scheduled for Sunday, semi-final, that they were meant to be playing Sunday, Tuesday.
Yeah. So that was moved without kind of any thought. It's just stupid, and I feel like kind of partisan things, people who don't like City or people who don't like the top six or the top flight of English football are using it to say, "Oh, what are you moaning about? Why don't you just play another game? Oh, you paid loads of money." Like, it don't matter if Coventry have played more games than City, like, over the course of the season. Did Coventry play 120 minutes against Real Madrid on Wednesday? No. So it's harder for City than it is for any other team to beat. And also a point raised by Guardiola a few weeks before, which is stupid but very true. Like, City had to travel for the game and Chelsea didn't. And it's logistics, and we're not going to get away from the semis being at Wembley, but it affects how you train and how you can prepare. Because if you know that you've got to get a train or whatever on Friday afternoon, that means you can't train as much on Friday. It's not like Pep can be going down like the Avanti carriage giving out team talks. It's like it all adds up, and when you've got so few hours between games, it's really difficult. And this isn't to say that City are moaning because they don't want to play 2 games a week or they don't want to do this or that. It's that there was a really obvious solution that would have been better for the welfare of the players and the spectacle of the game. The game would have been better if City had been if City had more rest. Like everyone on BBC One on Saturday night was worse off because of the scheduling decision. So it didn't seem to make any sense. And so I don't really know why people are so up in arms against it, really.
So I don't know who it was on Twitter was saying that, yeah, we will criticise players when they complain, but we'll also say this is ridiculous when it's scheduled like that. And you could say, yeah, it's no different to Aston Villa playing away in Europe on Thursday and playing a Premier League game on a Sunday, but there are only the Saturday Sunday games to play. And
I
think, like you say,
but that is also like it is. Those things have been in place, and managers have been very unhappy about, say, playing Wednesday away and Saturday 12:30.
Yeah.
And the broadcasters have listened and said, right, when you are away in Europe on Wednesday night, we won't put you at Saturday at 12:30. It doesn't stop people complaining about playing Wednesday night and then Saturday 12:30. I think City had that the other week when they played Aston Villa 8:15 and then Crystal Palace 12:30 on the Saturday. It happens. It's the price of being in multiple competitions. But like those things are established, and Thursday, Sunday is established for teams in the Europa League. Where the issue is with this FA Cup game is that there is no reason that anyone can give why City, Chelsea should not have been on the Sunday. You could have had Chelsea, Arsenal on the Wednesday or the Thursday. City, Brighton is the Thursday. And it would have been so much better for everyone involved, you would think. But for some reason, they just played it on the Saturday, again, for reasons that nobody has really made clear.
And they were willing to move the Brighton away game forward 24 hours at a week's notice if City got through to the Champions League semi-finals. It's not hard for the Premier League to help out in those situations, and Sky Sports, and I think Lineker had to say that. I think we're a little bit responsible for this as well, because it comes down to BBC and ITV. My light's just gone off here.
Yeah.
There we go.
You've not been active.
No, I'm not moving around enough, but no, it did feel like there was a real sort of City wanted to get it off the chest, and Bernardo said that, and he made the point of when he said it was not a level playing field on the FA's part. He said that, yeah, Chelsea have had 5 days to prepare, yes, because they're not in Europe, but also they've not travelled, and like you say, that did not go unnoticed by the players. And he was looking at the health, and he made a wider point. He said it feels like it's potentially against City, but he also accepts that other teams have to go through it. And he pointed to all the coefficient stuff that's going on at the moment, in that if the English FA and Sky Sports and TNT and all of these stakeholders want English teams to be more successful and more English teams in Europe, then help them out, because if it goes down to the Champions League, the Europa League, the Conference League, and qualifications and stuff, and how many English teams went out in the quarterfinals last week, probably because they're playing a lot of games and they've had to prioritise different competitions. And it's not the only reason that City went out of the Champions League, but they could have been helped out a lot more, I think.
Well, you don't, like, at the top level, these things are decided by very fine margins. Does De Bruyne put that chance away against Madrid with 5 minutes to go? Do City win the spot kick, the shootout? Like, it very, very fine, and you never know how much an extra bit can give you. I think Rodri said in the first leg against Madrid that City were kind of overrun in that first half because Madrid had 9 days to prepare, and City had played 2 games in the middle of that. As soon as Real are through to the semi-final, La Liga grants them moves their league game to a Friday night, so that they've got an extra day to prepare for the semi-final against Bayern. And if the Premier League don't want to do that, that's fine. But then, yeah, you kind of have to accept that a consequence of that will be teams get an advantage over you, and you have to deal with the consequences, which for England and the Premier League looks like, one less of their teams getting a place in Europe. We all bang on about how the Premier League's the best league in the world. Well, it's got one less place next season than Germany and Italy. So make of that what you will.
And do you want United in the Champions League if they can't? If they can
Well,
only
United
just
aren't going to finish fifth, so it's not an issue. I mean, like, as venturing off piece here slightly, but Villa kind of absolutely nailed it yesterday with their victory. For them to be, I think I checked, and they are. Let's check again.
They
They
just keep coming,
are.
don't they, Villa? Every time you think, oh, they're going to fall
Yeah.
off, they just keep winning.
United have to win all of their 6 remaining games and hope that Villa get 1 point from their remaining 4 to sort of overtake them. So, Villa have kind of
I think
locked up top
that
4.
permutation ended at United have to win the 6 games.
Well, yeah. But then, Tottenham have done very well this season. And yeah, they are looking at kind of not getting a Champions League place ahead of, Germany or Italy. Germany's only got 18 teams and they're going to have 5 in the Champions League because they perform better in Europe.
And their leagues and their broadcasters are helping them to do that. Back to City, Pep said he brought out his fridge again, didn't he? He said that they're going to have 2 days off and they need that rest. We're talking about the schedule, but it could help that they've got this 5 days between Chelsea and Brighton, even if the turnaround is then Thursday to Sunday again and the problem comes down. But I think this 5 days could be really beneficial, and I think it's one of those situations where he's just saying, I don't want to see you for 2 days now, isn't it?
Yeah, and I meant to bring this up talking about Bernardo Silva, so thank you for the reminder. But Pep said part of what he spoke to the players about this week and Bernardo about is like, it's okay to be sad. Like, as much as they need to keep going and keep their levels, like, don't sort of wash away that Real Madrid result and think, oh, I can't afford to think that was upsetting. Like, you're allowed to hurt and be sad and feel things that people should feel when they lose. Like, it's human and they are human. So, those things are important. And Guardiola gives his players more time off than kind of most managers because he recognizes how intense it is when you're on the sort of the treadmill of going every 3 days. And he is an intense man who demands a hell of a lot from everyone. And so when he can give players time off, he does, because you need to recharge. Like, I need to recharge, you need to recharge, everyone needs to recharge. And these Premier League footballers are no different in many ways. They kind of need it more because, of the intensity of what they're going through and working in every day. So they've got a few days off, and then we'll be back Tuesday to start building up for another long away trip to Brighton, and then they're at Forest on Sunday. So it's not easy, but whenever there's a chance to get a bit of kind of recovery in away from the club, because it does feel different as well, just like not being at the club at all. After most match days, they will come in and do a recovery session and whatever. But to be told, right, you're not needed for a few days, it does help you more switch off and relax. So that's kind of hopefully what they will be ahead of Brighton.
If there is going to be any benefit from going out of the Champions League, having those 2-3 midweeks, I think is going to be really important, because I was looking at the schedule, and I'll ask you about Kevin De Bruyne after we go to a break. But I mean, City players who are playing in the Euros could finish the season with the FA Cup final on May 25th. 10 days later, they'll have friendlies to start building up again for the Euros. If they get to the Euros final, that's on, I think, July 14th, and City's first friendly is on July 23rd. So that's what, two weeks if you're lucky, dotted around the summer that they're going to have off, so they need time to refresh, and I think it's going to be another busy summer, and it could be that City players only have 2 weeks in the next 12 months to themselves. They will probably have to manufacture in some break in that as well, but it's an issue that is not going to go away. We'll be back after a short break and look ahead to that Brighton game and see which players, if any, are going to be fit to travel to the Amex Stadium. Hi there, welcome back to the Talking City podcast. Before we look ahead to Brighton, Simon, Kevin De Bruyne was man of the match at Wembley. A bit of raised eyebrows in the press box. He wasn't man of the match. He said his first words after the game when he was interviewed on the pitch was, "I'm tired," and I think he's admitted that his form has been a little bit up and down. They say that the sign of a good team is when you play badly and win. He's playing not great, but still popping up with goals and assists. It feels like something's not right, and he does just need a rest.
Yeah. I think because De Bruyne takes more risks than most players and is always looking for that kind of ball that no one else sees. When he plays that ball that no one else sees and doesn't get it right, it goes probably straight to a defender, and it just looks like a big wasted opportunity. And I think we've seen that a lot more from De Bruyne in recent weeks and maybe months, where he's just struggled to influence the game as he should. And on top of that, you've got kind of Phil Foden influencing games in the middle when De Bruyne is not playing. And so now whenever De Bruyne doesn't play well, the feeling is, would Foden actually be better in that position and be doing more, and City be better with Foden instead of De Bruyne? So there's a few things that feel like they're kind of closing in on De Bruyne. Now, he's been there before and he's come through again, and because he's one of the best players in the world, and to be able to still get assists and goals and whatever is testament to how good he is. I think that the pass through the Chelsea defence line in the first half of Foden, where Foden takes it around the keeper, and it was just like unbelievable. Nobody else could have played that pass. But it's not quite going for him at the minute. And yeah, I think as well, from one ginger to another, he does look more tired than most people. And he doesn't look like an athlete necessarily. He's not got that build. He gets very red, looks out of breath very quickly. And sort of it looks like running is a bit of an effort. But obviously that is, far more deceptive on him than it is me. But he just looks to be struggling a bit. And when he is struggling, there are other players that can come in. You wonder sort of whether Pep will be tempted to go the Foden route in some of the games they've got coming up.
I think as well, I've written this a couple of times. I don't think he's played particularly well. I think he's been getting frustrated. I think he is continuing to win games, and it goes back to that Pep comment where he doesn't help you to play well, but he helps you to win games, and he's certainly been doing that. But it also feels like his brain's a little bit ahead of his legs at times at the moment.
Yeah,
but it's also a case where Kevin De Bruyne not playing at his best, he's still one of the best players on the pitch.
Yeah. And I would say as well, there was a moment in the second half where he was on the left wing and he knocked the ball inside to Rodri, and Rodri played it to him, but like 10 yards in front of him out of play. And he turned around as if to absolutely give him what for. And he would have been justified. And I think he would have done it if he'd been, well, I think he would have done it if he'd been playing better. But he sort of stopped before he did that, kind of recognized both his and the team's situation, and instead like put his hands above his head and applauded like the intent. And that was kind of, for me, it felt like him both recognizing his own performance and the team's performance, that they just weren't on it, and they were trying, but their legs and their brains were so tired that none of them were doing what exactly they wanted to do. And on a normal day, there's no chance Rodri misplaces that pass. Just like on a normal day, De Bruyne is a lot less kind of makes a lot better decisions than he did. But they still had enough to win the game. And, it's interesting. We're not talking about £1 billion bottle jobs. Chelsea obviously got called that the last time they were at Wembley. And I'm not saying it should be called that now, but kind of City were there for the taking, but still managed to beat a very good Chelsea team. So, and a Chelsea team that did cost a lot of money. So it's like you say, De Bruyne not quite his best, but still finding the way through, and City not quite, well, nowhere near the best, but like it's still more than enough in a lot of situations.
And we can say he was absolutely not man of the match, but the fact that BBC thought he was, and a fair few people also agreed, because he is continuing to pop up even when he's not at his best, and he's creating those goals and assists. It shows that he still has that aura and that impact on games. So
I saw it the other night, to be honest, against Real. Like, I really didn't think he played well against Real, and then I looked at Twitter and seen so many De Bruyne masterclass tonight, De Bruyne at his best again tonight, and I'm thinking, like, it's not unusual for me to be completely off the pace with those kind of things, but I was like, I'm really not seeing it.
Are our standards too high? Is that it? Have we
maybe
seen him this time last year blowing teams apart, and even at Palace he's winning the game even though his all-round play isn't great?
I think that, but I also think there's a bit of, you notice things a bit less when you're not at the game. And also, I think, as has been the case with City this season, people from outside have kind of said, "Oh yeah, it's City, they're amazing, they win all the games," and they've sort of said, "Oh yeah, De Bruyne with a goal, yeah, brilliant game, brilliant talent." And you sort of, when you actually get into the mechanics of what's gone on, you sort of actually that's not quite the case.
De Bruyne, I think Bernardo said that he was one of the players who was feeling just tired, and he said it himself. Maybe potentially drop to the bench against Brighton. We don't know what the situation with Haaland is. Pep Guardiola couldn't say whether he was confident that Haaland would be there or not. Stones goes off with a fitness or physicality issue and probably needs the rest over these few days. Grealish gets a kick. When he left, he didn't seem to be in too bad a mood or moving with any limp, but you never know with these kicks. Bernardo said he had a sort of a hamstring and a calf issue. It could be quite a tricky game against Brighton, couldn't it, with not many of your key players there?
It's always a tricky game against Brighton. De Zerbi's Brighton, they exist to make life uncomfortable for opposition teams. On the flip side, if he's fit, it's probably a game that will suit De Bruyne more than most will, because it will allow for sort of City to be in more kind of transition mode and making the most of those, the opportunities and the space that Brighton give you. However, they're just gonna have to see. De Bruyne tends to be one of the players who recovers more slowly than others. Foden is kind of at the other end of the scale, and you would think that he would be, probably lined up to start that game, and so maybe De Bruyne isn't. But yeah, they are at just that stage of the season with all of their levels of fitness that Pep's just going to have to sort of have several conversations with his medical team and decide.
I think it could be a similar situation to Palace, where you've got a couple of quick games in succession, and do you rest Foden, for example, and with the intention to play him at Forest, or vice versa? Or if you've got two players who could play one position, do you think ahead to the second game and accept that they probably can't play twice in 3 days again, especially with the travelling back from Brighton on Thursday night or Friday? So it's going to be tricky, and I think Brighton, it always seems to be around this time of the season, doesn't it, away at the Amex, and it always seems to be quite tricky.
Yeah.
Sometimes and let's the titles being won, but
Yeah, let's not forget City in third place now.
Well, yeah, the title race is back on after being dead for a week, so they could be 4
So
points behind, as we know when they kick off at Brighton, which again gives them. It's not like they've got to win this game. They've
yeah,
got to win every
yeah,
game.
yeah. Yeah, it's going to be the case that they're just going to have to battle through as they did on Saturday. But they should all be in better condition on Saturday than they were on Thursday than they were on Saturday. So, you know, we should see more of a kind of typical City performance than we got at Wembley.
And the fact that they did just battle and get it done against Chelsea suggests that even if they're not at the best or they're not at the full fitness, then they do have that sort of battling quality to go and win the title again. And it feels like they've already put the Real Madrid sort of defeat behind them in a sense that they're like, we've still got these two to play for. They got through the Chelsea test and now they know exactly what they're doing. So I'll be there at Brighton. You don't fancy the long trip, do you?
We've got a wedding, mate. Got a wedding.
Far more important things to do
I would
than
love to be there. Love to be there. I went there last season when you bailed out of it and ended up sat next to an Ecuadorian YouTuber who was going crazy at everything Moises Caicedo was doing. Which, you know, nice little segue because City were going crazy at everything Caicedo was doing on Saturday.
Have they got any Ecuadorians there this season? I'll see if I can see
Who
what he's
knows?
up to.
Yeah.
This is the thing with Brighton. I don't really know who they've got, but I know they're going to be good.
Yeah.
Picked them up from somewhere, but always seem to do very well. So yeah, we'll be all over that game on Thursday, the press conference on Wednesday, and then we'll look ahead to Nottingham Forest on Friday, which the game is obviously on Sunday. So yeah, we'll be back later in the week or next week for another Talking City podcast. Until then, Si, thanks for joining us. I'll see you in about 30 seconds when I walk across the room to catch up, and then we'll be back later this week or next week with another Talking City podcast. Thank you for joining us.